Hello, Rick Harris here, showing you a little something a little different from what I created with the first box. This is my second Magrav, ready to fire up. Just installed my split capacitors and waiting for those capacitors to dry. So let me show you what I've got now. So I wanted to go with the compact unit and also to see, and everyone can see how this thing is being operated and where our wires are feeding into it. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so as this unit feeds in, I'm feeding a 14 gauge power cord that will always be plugged in the proper polarity with the ground on the end of the plug. Even though you'll see that we don't use the ground, there's no reason to ground in here. What you'll see on top is this split capacitor. So this split capacitor, what I'm doing is as I feed my power in with my plug, you'll see this black 14 gauge solid copper wire that is jumping onto the bare copper wire, which feeds the bottom coil. So as it flows across, two things are happening. First is the split capacitor. Second is a row of 5 capacitors plugged in on the negative side. So these capacitors right here, we're grabbing the negative side of the capacitors and wrapping around our positive wire as it feeds into the unit. So as it comes over, now our split capacitor that's on top is slaving on to that wire, which in turn is powering the number 1 coil on the bottom. And the capacitors on the other side jumping across from entering into the bottom coil and and jumping across the neutral. So as we see, as these feed, they're feeding opposite. So the negative side is feeding the power line coming back from the coil to load. So if we come up on top, now our power is coming out of the Magrav, running through our split capacitor, which takes that split and feeds it right back to the beginning. The load continues on, slaves on to our load line, which as it comes down, we're picking up the negative side of the capacitors to that load. And as the load travels through on this wire here, comes out right here and into our 14 gauge splitter. I just felt that the 14 gauge was just to keep all the gauges proper in the same size. I don't know if it's necessary. I'll have to ask the Keshe Foundation if 14 is necessary.